Sedna, Chapter 1. In the far north of the world, in a land of ice and snow, there lived a girl named Sedna. She lived alone with her father and helped him with his fishing and hunting. Sedna was very beautiful. She had long black hair which she liked her father to comb as she sat before the fire. One clear, cold morning, Sedna was cleaning the fish her father had caught. Her father sat nearby, sharpening his harpoon. As Sedna turned to hang the fish out to dry, she saw a figure walking across the snow. "Look," she said, "we have a visitor." Her father looked up. "I don't think I know this man," he said. The figure was dressed in a robe of thick fur. A large hood hung over his face. There was something odd about the way he held his body. His shoulders were hunched and his head bent forward. There was a croak in his voice when he spoke. "I'm looking for a wife," he said to Sedna's father. "I've been told that your daughter is very beautiful. Now that I've seen her, I know it is true." "Who are you?" Sedna's father asked the stranger. "I am a great chief," he said. "My land is across the sea. If Sedna will come with me and be my wife, she will be well looked after. There are many riches in my country." Sedna looked at the stranger. He was mysterious, but she could see his eyes glimmering under the shadow of the hood. Sedna liked the idea of being a chief's wife in a rich country. So when her father looked at her, she smiled and nodded. Chapter 2. Sedna quickly packed and then said goodbye to her father. Her new husband's kayak was waiting on the shore. The chief rowed the kayak across the icy sea. Before long, Sedna saw an island. In the distance, it just looked like a lump of bare, jagged rock. As he got closer, Sedna gasped. The island really was just a lump of bare, jagged rock. As it climbed out of the kayak, there was a harsh laugh behind her. She turned and let out a cry of horror. It wasn't a human face that looked back at her. It was the face of a giant raven. Sedna tried to jump back into the kayak, but the raven grabbed her in the beak. He dragged her to a craggy peak where there was a nest of dry twigs and fish bones. "This is your home from now on," croaked the raven. "Enjoy your meal," he cackled. Then he flew away. Sedna looked around her. The peak was too steep for her to climb down. She was stranded. There was one raw fish in the nest. It was only food. Sedna began to cry. Chapter 3. That night, an icy wind swirled around the island. Sedna sat in the nest, shivering. In her misery, she called out to her father. The wind sucked up her voice and carried it across the wild, rolling waves. The wind blew Sedna's voice into her father's dreams. He woke up knowing that his daughter was in trouble. He ran down to his kayak and set out to rescue her. By dawn, Sedna's father had reached the island. He saw Sedna stranded on the rocky peak, so he threw up a strong, thick fishing line. Sedna tied the line to some rocks and used it to climb down into her father's boat. She hugged him, sobbing. "Please take me home," she begged. The kayak hadn't gone far before there was a heavy beating of wings and a dark shadow passed over them. It was a raven. He swooped down, grabbing for Sedna with his beak. Sedna's father struck him with the oar. The raven shrieked and flew up again. Then he swooped over down the sea, beating at the waves with his wings, whipping them into a terrible storm. The kayak rolled from side to side, pounded by the heavy ocean. Suddenly, a mighty wave crashed over the kayak. Sedna was flung into the icy sea. Sedna struggled back towards the kayak and grasped its side. Her father reached down to help her, but Sedna's hands and fingers had frozen. When he took hold of them, they snapped off and dropped into the ocean. With a cry, Sedna fell back and was sucked beneath the waves. The raven gave a croak of victory and flew back to his island. With a heavy heart, Sedna's father paddled his kayak back home. Chapter 4. Time passed, but a deep gloom spread over the seas. Senna's father went out fishing, but he caught less and less. It was the same for the other fishermen. Families went hungry. They began to starve. One night, Senna's father dreamed his daughter was calling to him. In his dream, he set off in his kayak to look for her. At first, the sea was calm, but when he looked into the water, he saw strange creatures. They were large, grey, whiskery creatures with tails and flippers. They began to knock against his kayak. He was terrified. The kayak rocked backwards and forwards until it tipped up, and Senna's father was plunged into the water. He sank down, deeper and deeper, until he reached the seabed. There, to his amazement, he found Senna. She has changed. She still had a human face and her long hair, but her body was that of a seal. Her broken off fingers had become these new creatures. The seals, the walruses, and the great whales. She had power over these creatures and power over the sea itself. Senna was now goddess of the sea. Yet it did not make her happy. She was sad and lonely. And that's why she had kept the fish at the bottom of the sea with her. Senna's father listened to his daughter. He soothed her sadness by combing her long hair, as he used to do. He told her that people were starving and begged her to let all the fish and creatures of the sea swim freely again. At last, Senna agreed, but only if her father made a promise. He had to promise that whenever she was lonely, a man would come down to her kingdom to keep her company and comb out her hair. When Senna's father woke, he knew it had not been an ordinary dream. He took out his kayak and found the seas once more filled with fish and those strange new creatures, the seals and walruses. The people of the north say that Senna is still there, deep down on the seabed. When she's happy, the fish and creatures of the sea swim freely, but when she is lonely, the sea seems empty. There's a man must go in his dreams beneath the sea. He must find Senna, comb out her hair, and remind her of life in the upper world.